Alright guys, the Yonko are just the top power level in One Piece. There's no other way of saying it. With island-destroying powers and the ability to take on entire armies all by themselves, I mean, things get pretty insane. However, even though there are only officially 4 emperors in the current story, we all know that there are actually many other characters from the past and even the present who can actually stand up to them in a fight and might even be stronger. And so today with you, I want to find out every single character who is on Yonko level, and some of them I think might shock you because I'm gonna throw some really juicy names out there. Like, we're gonna talk about some characters that you will probably never even think about, but of course we're gonna start out with the current Yonko, Luffy, Red Hair Shanks, and the evil Marshal D. Teach, who are all 3 obviously Yonko level. Then we also of course have Buggy over here being the only one who kind of stands out as either being a total fraud or possibly just reaching God tier, fooling everyone. Honestly, there is somehow a non-zero chance in my head that he's actually gonna become Pirate King by the end of the story before Luffy, based on just the way that he always seems to fail his way to the top. Next up, we of course then have former Yonko like the world's strongest man Whitebeard, the Pirate Empress Big Mom, and the world's strongest creature Kaido. They all were Yonko level as well, obviously, based on the fact that they were actually Yonko themselves. But as we've now officially run out of current and former emperors, we now need some way of determining which characters are actually Yonko tier, besides just my own crazy headcanon, of course. Not that I don't think that it's incredibly good headcanon, but just to be fair. So let's just start with one of the most obvious Yonko tier characters, Monkey D. Garp, because I just don't think anyone would argue that this massive Chad guy over here is a Yonko tier character with his absolutely devastating power on full display recently with his massive Galaxy Impact Punch. Very clearly shows that this dude has advanced forms of Haki. And going back to Wano, possessing advanced Haki is of course one of the main ways that I will be judging if a character are Yonko level or not, or have a chance of being that. And the other main way to judge a character's strength is if they can actually throw down with other Yonko tier characters as well. Because remember, we all know that Garp was a main rival of legendary pirates like the former Pirate King Roger, so that is even more justification in my head for Garp being Yonko level, at least definitely in his youth, but probably potentially even now. And so going forward, we're gonna go and look at characters that I think can reasonably fight or potentially even defeat Yonko, plus those who show off these advanced forms of Haki on top of it as well. However, maybe you noticed there's actually one major problem with this, because not all Yonko tier characters have had a chance to actually show off advanced forms of Haki yet in the story. I mean, as a perfect example, just take the former Fleet Admiral Sengoku here, because even though he can use all 3 forms of Haki officially, this information was actually only confirmed in an extra data set, and we've never even seen him demonstrate advanced version of these powers, since we've never seen him fight a lot in the story to begin with. What we do know though is that this guy was one of the most important Marines in history when facing off against the former Pirate King and even Whitebeard in the past era of Legends. On top of just that, he almost also wiped out Blackbeard's entire crew in like a single hit during the war at Marineford, so since Sengoku clearly used to be able to go toe-to-toe with Yonko level characters, and not only was an Admiral but became the Fleet Admiral, we're gonna slot him in right next to his good buddy Garp here. Oh, also I think I forgot to mention it, but I think it goes without saying that the former Pirate King Goldie Roger was absolutely Yonko tier as well. I mean, do I even need to explain that one? Just look at this clash with Whitebeard right here. That just should be enough evidence all by itself. So, bam! That beautiful mustache goes right into that list behind me. Which of course means that I can't call myself a true One Piece fan without putting Roger's greatest enemy, Roxy Zebek, right next to his old foe as well. Because even though we still have never actually seen Rox fight or seen Rox's face, his sheer reputation and the ability to command his truly insane crew is to me already easily enough to earn Yonko tier status as well in my books. But with these guys out of the way, this is the point where things are starting to get a little bit tricky, and these next 2 characters might already start being a little bit controversial. First off, I have the Golden Lion Shiki. Now, we do have to kind of keep in mind that Shiki was never officially a Yonko, but that's pretty much only because he sailed the seas before the Yonko system was ever even a thing. And since this guy was also one of the main rivals of Roger, as we see in the special chapter 0, in my opinion, that should also be enough for him to earn Yonko status too. But I do think that our next character here could potentially even defeat Shiki, because Roger's right-hand man, my favorite character in the story, Rayleigh, was an absolute beast. And even though he was second in command to Roger himself, he still earned himself the title of Dark King and was often considered to be nearly as strong as Roger himself. Plus, we've actually seen him clash with Admirals even at his really advanced age at this point, and his reputation alone was enough to make Blackbeard retreat from a recent find, so Prime Rayleigh was absolutely Yonko level. And you know what's coming along with Rayleigh, I'm gonna have to throw in my other favorite character, my man, Scopper Gaban here. Now with his introduction in the Elbaf arc finally, this missionary of love is said to have strength comparable to the Dark King himself. And as one of the two wings of the former Pirate King, even if Rayleigh might be a little bit stronger, like even if that was the case, Scopper is very clearly no slouch either. But now, I do need you to prepare yourself a little bit, because this next character I'm going to show you might just have you lose your mind. Because we've talked about some old-timers who are definitely Yonko tier, but let's talk about characters who are active right now in the story that, in my opinion, would make the cuts. Starting with yet another recent manga revelation and everyone's new favorite giant, the Cursed Prince Loki. Now, I know, like this man is quite literally chained up to a tree and has done almost nothing in the story except taking punches, but come on, if any character in the story is Yonko tier just on aura alone and his first impression, it must be this guy right here. Plus, we already know that he clashed with Shanks, and it took every single giant in Elbaf to capture him and keep him chained up, so based on those stats alone, Loki is really earning the spot on this tier list in my opinion for sure. And then our next character here needs no real introduction either, because it's the world's strongest swordsman, possible former Holy Knight, Dracul Mihawk. And I mean, come on, like the title alone should already earn him Yonko status based on all the other crazy swordsmen at this level as well. Also, his 1v1 duels with Shanks are literally the stuff of legends in One Piece, so I think enough said for this one. Our next character, though, I do think is gonna be a little bit controversial, because in my opinion, the former Admiral Kuzan here is definitely also Yonko level. Now, before I say anything, that wasn't really a super easy decision for me, and I honestly kind of went back and forth a little bit about whether to really include him here, because so far he hasn't shown any forms of advanced haki, so no points there, unless maybe the Rio thing that he did during Marineford, so I guess that might count. But he also got recently bodied pretty badly by Garp before the other Blackbeard pirates stepped in to help him. However, I do feel like Kuzan wasn't going all out against his former mentor due to some sentimental feelings and all that, and him probably not being a bad guy, but still not really that impressive, I could say. But then he also permanently changed the entire landscape on Punk Hazard, soloed almost the entire Blackbeard crew when they tried to recruit him, and then basically took out all of Big Mom's Sweet commanders all by himself too. And as if all of that wasn't enough yet, we simply cannot overlook this next fact, because during the time skip, we're actually told that Kuzan fought against the current fleet Admiral Akainu for 10 days straight. 10 days! Like, that is absolutely insane, because it means that they are really, really closely matched, and since Akainu is 100% Yonko tier, that means that Kuzan, in my books, is probably as well. So he's going up there, and let me just put Akainu next to his chilly buddy right here too, where he's right— oh wait, this was the wrong list. This was actually the list of fantastic Patreons of this channel. Thank you, patrons. What a big oopsie, but since we're talking about it, if you want to support the channel and really make a difference and allow us to make way better content, have all this nice artwork, good editors, and so on and so forth, check out the Patreon. We have some really cool rewards, early podcasts with some crazy guests, artwork, you know, bonus videos, all that stuff. All right, but with that little seamless plug, nailed it, back to the video. Because with these next upcoming characters, I'm just gonna say things are just gonna get more and more controversial. Because, hot take here, but I think that the Admirals are actually all Yonko level 2. And now I know this might trigger a lot of people, but I kind of stand by the fact that we've never seen one of these Admirals actually go completely all out yet. I mean, sure, in the recent manga chapters in Eckert Island, Kizaru got beat up pretty badly by Luffy, but his Devil Fruit is without any doubt one of the strongest in the entire story, with the ability to move at hyper speed, shoot laser beams, and even split into light clones. And with all of his crazy powers, it took someone as powerful as Rayleigh to even try and keep him from killing the Straw Hats back at Sabaody. As for Fujitora here, he can just straight up literally summon meteors, and his Devil Fruit is strong enough to completely tear islands apart. Oh, and then there's also Green Bull, who, okay, I will have to admit, so far has kind of come off as the weakest admiral in history, but I do think that there is a certain status to being an admiral, and we haven't quite seen his full real power just quite yet. And remember that Green Bull actually also clashed with Fujitora, which to me is evidence that they are at least quite similar in strength. But now, before we get into the absolute monsters in the world government, let's first discuss your favorite characters who just barely missed the cut in my books for Yonko level. And I'm gonna start by just absolutely breaking everyone's heart here a little bit, because sadly, I think that everyone's favorite surgeon, Trafalgar Law, just barely misses out on the Yonko tier. But hear me out for a second, because it was actually a pretty tough call, because obviously Law and Kit teamed up together to defeat Big Mom during Wano, but if we're being completely honest, they pretty much just knocked her off the island. Not exactly the most convincing knockout blow. And on top of that, both Kid and Law just got wiped out by current Emperors with Blackbeard and Shanks, so I mean, you gotta be real. There's just no way that we can justify putting either of them up in the Yonko tier right here. And pretty much the same goes for some characters like Marco the Phoenix, Momonosuke, or even Yamato, because while all three of these characters at least clashed with Kaido and Big Mom during the Wano arc and are undoubtedly insanely powerful, I think none of them quite really stood a chance one-on-one of even defeating one of the former Emperors realistically. And we can even say the same thing for Zoro here, because even though he did damage Kaido and unlocked advanced Conqueror's Haki, to me just hasn't really had enough solid feats against any of the Emperors to convince me that he's at this level yet. He's gonna get there, no question about it, soon. And as you can guess, the same reasoning applies to someone like Sanji and actually two other Yonko commanders with Ben Beckman and Shiryu. Like, all in all, they are crazy powerful fighters, and they might all eventually show enough to earn Yonko status, but sadly they need a little bit more, or we need a little bit more, to actually reach that top level. And I'm also gonna have former Rocks pirates like Silver Axe and Ochoku just missing the cut here, because while we can assume that these guys were pretty powerful members of the Rocks pirates, we honestly just don't know very much about them at all, and I think it's really hard to put a character into Yonko tier if we don't know who they are, what they did, and I think they both died. I mean, so that's not great. Which now, though, brings us to the strongest fighters in the world government with the Gorosei. And as we've seen in recent chapters of the manga during Egghead Island, these guys are literal monsters. I mean, just like, they are literal monsters. They each have this gigantic form with unique abilities on top of just being able to regenerate completely, even having holes in your head, which is pretty busted. Like, these guys were such a big problem that even full power Gear 5 Luffy could barely even scratch one of them, and this group of characters will 100%, no doubt about it, be one of the biggest endgame bosses in the story. Then of course we also have to throw Garling in here as well, since he was just elevated to becoming the newest member of the Gorosei as well, and I'm pretty sure we're gonna see some pretty busted power from him too. Oh, yeah, and it turns out that of course the Figalin's insane crazy strength kind of runs in the family, because Garling's son Shanks is also a current Yonko, so I just have to imagine that Shanks' twin brother Shamrock is also at a very similar level. Also, as a little bonus evidence here, Shamrock can conjure this massive beastly Cerberus from his sword that can injure super powerful giants like Loki, which is pretty wild, even if of course Loki was still chained up and couldn't use any of his powers. Now, so far it's still a little bit unclear whether Shamrock's subordinates in the God Knights are at a similar level of strength like Gunko here, but Shamrock is certainly a real force to be reckoned with, and I would be surprised out of my mind if he wasn't in that Yonko tier as well. But okay, we've now gone through all the characters that are, in my opinion, definitely Yonko tier, but what about someone like Luffy's father, Monkey D. Dragon? Because based on his reputation alone, he should be Yonko level. I mean, he's literally the most wanted man in the world and the leader of the Revolutionary Army, which has declared war on the world nobles, so you need to be kind of strong to do that. And I surely hope for his sake that he can actually back up his bid with some Emperor tier power as well. But we don't really know yet. Like, he's never fought on screen even once, so we can't really say that we know for sure at this point. Just putting it out there, but for all we know, he could be a total fraud, kind of like Buggy, but I'm gonna go with my gut feeling here with this one and put Dragon in the very probably 99% a Yonko level as well. And his second in command, Sabo, is going right next to him because unlike his leader, Sabo actually does have some pretty solid feats in the story. For one, he clashed with Admiral Fujitora in Marijoa and even more impressively escaped from the combined assault of all the Gorosei, which is actually even more impressive given what we now know about them already to be true. And so I'm pretty ready to put him at Yonko tier, even though I do think that he will still get even stronger by the end of the story and possibly even take out one of the god tier characters himself, which we will be discussing at the end of this video. But also, speaking of second in command, how do you feel about the former warlord Crocodile? Yonko tier? Fraud tier? Well, I'm gonna be heating things up a little bit here because I think that Crocodile is probably going to be a Yonko level character as well. Not yet. And this isn't just my personal feeling, there's a lot of evidence to back this up too, because technically he did defeat Luffy twice in Alabasta, but then ever since Luffy won the final battle, Crocoman has had more and more impressive showings basically each time that he shows up in the story. Like, this dude clashed with some serious powerhouses in Marineford, such as his newly found partner Mihawk, and on top of that, Oda is positioning Crocodile to be on par or at least very close to the world's strongest swordsman in their new cross-guild organization as well. So yeah, you may not like it, but I kind of do feel like Oda is setting up Crocodile to become way more buff and actually end up in the Yonko tier as well. And then kind of like with Dragon, you can have a very similar debate about the commander-in-chief of the world government, Kong here, who's just never around, because based on reputation alone, this guy should absolutely be a Yonko tier character. I mean, he was the former fleet admiral, and of course before that, one of the admirals, so this dude should pack some very serious power, but we just have no idea, like, what he's actually like. We've never seen him outside his office, and I think there we only saw him once, so I'll leave him at very probably Yonko level. I just really hope we get to see him in the story. I'm so intrigued by this guy. Is he related to Luffy? Like, what's the deal here? And we're just gonna get more and more controversial here because these next few characters are probably gonna get me into a lot of trouble because I think that Mont Blanc Noland was probably a Yonko tier character. Yeah, that Noland. You know, the explorer from the Skypiea flashback. I know he's barely ever fought, but some of his feats are honestly truly crazy. He can easily slay giant creatures such as this fish and this giant snake god, and on top of that, he literally shook an entire island. But even more important than any of those feats, I actually do believe that Nolan was kind of this Luffy type character for his own time periods. A fierce adventurer who sought freedom just like Luffy or Roger or Joy Boy from the distant past. And all of that together kind of puts the chestnut head into very probably Yonko tier for me as well, and I do hope we get to see a little bit more of him. And since the Shandian chief Kalgara was considered his equal, you know, might as well throw that guy in there as well. They're dead, so we'll probably never know, but in my head, they are Yonko tier characters. But next up, what about a slightly less controversial pick? Because I'm also going to argue that the former warlord and revolutionary Bartholomew Kuma was probably also Yonko tier. Because consider this, Kuma has what very likely is the single most broken devil fruit in all of One Piece. He used to occupy Sabo's position as basically second in command of the revolutionaries, founding them together with Dragon, and even as a mindless, mostly dead cyborg, he seriously wounded one of the monstrous Gorosei as well. So in my mind, a fully healthy Kuma with all of his devil fruit abilities would absolutely be able to fight against the strongest characters in the story in my book. And yet, even he might not be able to fight against these next characters because I'm just gonna come out and say it, I think that all of the Seraphim are very likely Yonko level 2. I mean, these genetically enhanced clones are already strong enough to clash with Yonkos like Luffy and make Blackbeard worried, so that's really looking not that great. great. They also have the insane powers of their original humans, plus the added advantage of Lunarian healing, and some of them even received new Devil Fruit powers as well. And at this point in the story, they're just basically still children, so I imagine that very soon they will get even stronger than the original characters that they're based on, which is why I'm gonna place them into Yonko tier, especially once what I assume will happen, they grow up really fast into adults. Which now finally brings us to the ultimate tier, the stronger than Yonko tier, or as I like to call it, the God tier, with the characters that are so powerful they deserve to be even higher than the regular Yonko. And as you can probably guess, there are basically only 2 characters in this tier, and they happen to be longtime enemies. Of course, I'm talking about the secret ruler of the world government, Imu, and the legendary figure from the Void Century, Joy Boy. And I guess maybe we can throw, Nika in there as well, but Joy Boy is a good representative. And I mean, what else do I really need to say here? Imu seems to be immortal and has unexplained mythical powers, seems to have dated back, to the first world of One Piece as we see in the mural. They seem to have complete control of the Gorosei, potentially even giving them their power, even to the level that they can just suck their life force away at will from a distance. And yet, even Imu seemed to be scared of Joy Boy, as when Joy Boy's Haki was released by this giant robot Emeth, Imu fell to his knees and screamed. And so I would argue that very clearly these 2 characters are just on a completely different power level from anything else we've seen in the story so far. But I will say that Imu's powers may just not be as mysterious after all, because at this point we do have enough evidence to make some pretty good guesses on who they are and what their true power and form is. And if you're really curious what Imu's true form is and why I definitely think that they are a big massive dragon, you can watch that video next to me right here. As always, otherwise, thanks so much for watching, and thanks so much to all the awesome Patreons. Have some super cool stuff planned for Patreon, so again, if you don't want to miss out and help the channel, would really appreciate you checking it out, and I will see you in the next one.